Hello and welcome to our Bible study. My name is James, and we are going through the Gospel of Mark and the life of Jesus Christ, and we're now in chapter 14, starting in verse 26. If this is the first time that you've joined us, don't worry about that. You'll be able to pick up right with us, and if you want to, you can go explore our archives and look at any of those past messages from the Gospel of Mark that you want to. That's what they're there for. Anyway, Mark chapter 14, verse 26. Why don't you grab a cup of coffee? It's a good fall weather day, the day that I'm recording this, and let's dive in. Okay, so Mark chapter 14, Jesus is with his disciples. It's just after the Last Supper, as we call it, in that upper room where Jesus and the disciples celebrated the Passover. So you've got kind of a spiritual high, and it's kind of a sacred, solemn evening. And you have on top of that the layer of Jesus has predicted that he is going to be betrayed by one of his disciples. They don't really quite fully understand all that he's saying when he talks about that. And they kind of keep hitting back at Jesus with, oh, no, that's not going to happen. And it's not going to be me. And this would never happen. They're just wrestling with it. And all of that is running through their hearts and through their minds as they walk from the upper room in Jerusalem to the Mount of Olives and then ultimately to Gethsemane, where Judas will meet them with the authorities to betray Jesus. But we'll look at that next week. Before that happens, Jesus has a conversation with the disciples and really kind of focused especially on Peter. Peter kind of brings that focus on himself in the conversation that we'll read here, starting in verse 26. And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives, and Jesus said to them, "You will all fall away, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. But after I'm raised up, I will go before you to Galilee." Peter said to him, "Even though they all fall away, I will not." And Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this very night, before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times. But he said emphatically, "If I must die with you, I will not deny you." And they all said the same. Okay, so a familiar story, familiar conversation. Maybe there's a detail or two there that caught your eye maybe in a different way than before. Let's go back and look at what they say. It's a kind of a short little text that we're going to look at today. First, Jesus warns them, you are all going to fall away. He has said before that one of the disciples is going to betray him, but now he says, you're all going to fall away. And that phrase, fall away, probably hit their ears in kind of an odd way. Like, what do you mean we're all just going to abandon you? We're all going to completely fail? This is all over? What are you saying, Jesus? But he doesn't really elaborate on all of that. Instead, he quotes a passage from Zechariah chapter 13 and verse 7. "Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. I will turn my hand against the little ones." And Jesus says, this is what's going to happen. Satan is going to strike a blow against the shepherd, which is Jesus. Jesus is the good shepherd, like he says in the Gospel of John. And when that happens, all the little ones, which is the disciples, are going to scatter and flee. And we know this is exactly what happened. When Jesus is arrested and when he is put on trial, they all run. They all run. And we kind of understand why. I mean, we might look at that and say, yeah, what a bunch of chickens they were. But we also may have made the same mistake. Were we wearing their shoes and in their circumstance? I have no idea. I don't read these things with the mindset of, well, I would have done that better, because probably not. These men are my heroes. If they made mistakes, then chances are I'd have made bigger ones. That's just kind of the way I tend to look at that. But I wonder, how would that question strike you? How would that fall on your ears? What would you say and what would you think if your hero says to you, I'm about to be attacked and you're about to fail me? You're about to fall away. I think that would be hard to hear. Just my gut reaction is that would be really hard to hear, and it would just suck the wind right out of my sails. And they kind of react to it with this attitude of, oh, no, Jesus, you're wrong. But I don't I don't know that I would react that way, and maybe I would. I don't know. I don't think I would say, Jesus, you're wrong. I tend to, my struggle is rarely in a lack of confidence in Jesus or his ability to know what's going to happen, right? My lack of confidence would always tend to be in myself. And so my first thought would be, man, I've blown it enough in my life. Now you're telling me I'm about to blow it again. And if there's anybody I don't want to disappoint, it would be Jesus. And maybe that's exactly what some of them felt. We don't know individually what they all felt. We kind of know more about what Peter thought, but we just know that they all kind of reject it outright and say, oh, no way. But Jesus isn't wrong, and we know this because we have the hindsight of the revealed word that tells us what happened next. But even then, I think we would all kind of know. We don't want to think that we would fail him, but we do. And then notice my verb tense there. We do, right? I have failed the Lord. I failed people, and so have you. This is the human dilemma, right? Even when we want to do our best and we want to stand strong, we often make really huge mistakes. Jesus tells them, this is what's about to happen. You are about to go through, kind of as Jonathan Edwards put it, the dark night of your soul. You're about to make one of the biggest mistakes of your life. You're going to fall away. You're going to run away. You're going to run scared. But there is comfort here. Okay? So there is comfort. First, the fact that he says this, and that he says, in Zechariah, written hundreds of years before, this was already predicted. In a way, I don't want to say it softens the blow. That's probably not the right way to put it. But there is a little bit of comfort in knowing, okay, God has known this was going to happen all along. And Jesus knew this was going to happen all along. And if Jesus knew that we were going to fail and Jesus still chose us, what does that tell us? That's a good question, isn't it? When you think about your failures, past, present, and the ones you fear you may have in the future, remember this. Jesus has called you. Jesus has chosen you. Jesus, if you're a Christian, Jesus has saved you. If you're not yet a Christian, Jesus wants to save you. And that want to, that desire on his part to save, to redeem, to show grace, and to show forgiveness was all in the heart of God, despite the fact he has known from before the creation of the world that you and I would fail at times. Despite the fact that he has known since before the creation of the world that it would cost him the life of his Son in order to redeem us from those failures. He loves you enough that he went through what he is going to go through in these next few chapters. Okay, that doesn't go away just because he knows that we have failures. So there's a comfort to the disciples in this. Yeah, we've known this all along, God the Son and God the Father. We've known that I would be attacked, and I took this on anyway. And we've known that in that attack, you would fail me, you would fall away, but I love you, and I'm here for you, and we're going to get through this. There's a comfort in that. They don't comprehend it all yet, but they will. They will. By the end of this book, they're going to get what I'm telling you right here. And I hope that we do too, by the end of this gospel, that we get that everything Jesus goes through, he goes through because he loves us, not because he can challenge us to be faultless. He loves us in our faults. Paul put it this way in the book of Romans, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for the ungodly. Because he loves you that much. Because he desires to redeem us that much. Okay? So this is what he says. Let's go on. He says in verse 28, another statement that brings us hope. In verse 28 he says, but after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee. Now that just sounds like this practical thing. After I am raised up, I will go to Galilee. Well, the I am raised up is huge. Okay, he's talking about the resurrection, and they don't yet get that. He's told them several times, I'm going to a cross. They're going to crucify me. And on the third day, I will come back to life. But they don't get it yet. Understandably so, but they don't get it. But he says it again, after I'm raised up. So the attack of Satan on the shepherd will not be ultimately victorious. I will be raised up. Reason for hope number one. Then he says, when I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee. Galilee is where they are actually going to run and hide. But he says, I'll be there first. I'm going to meet you there. So whatever happens, it isn't final, and I am still going to be with you because I am for you. And the because I am for you, he doesn't use those words, but you know what he does say? He says, I will go before you. This language is not just, I'm going to get there first. This language goes back to several incidences in the Old Testament where God told Israel and where God told his people, I will go before you. Or sometimes he says, I will send my angel before you. It was always a message just before something big was about to happen that even though it seems daunting, even though there may be reason for fear, even though this may be difficult, what lies ahead, I want you to know, I am right out there in front of you. Or in some cases, he says, I send my angel in front of you. God constantly told them, you don't go alone, and not only that, but I am the advanced forces. I, God myself, am the advanced forces. And Jesus is saying the same thing, using the exact same language with the disciples here. Let me give you an example from the Old Testament. Deuteronomy chapter 31, verses 7 and 8 says this, Then Moses summoned Joshua and said to him in the sight of all Israel, Be strong and courageous, for you shall go with this people into the land that the Lord has sworn to their fathers to give them, and you shall put them in possession of it. It is the Lord who goes before you. He will be with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Do not fear or be dismayed. So this is right at the edge of the promised land. They're about to cross the Jordan, all but Moses. Moses wasn't allowed to go over to the other side of the Jordan. But Joshua is about to lead the people of Israel into the promised land, this fulfillment of a promise centuries old. It's an awesome moment. And God says, as you go in there, I will be right there with you. You will never be abandoned. You will never be alone. I will go before you and clear the way. Trust me. Jesus uses that language on purpose before the crucifixion, before the resurrection to say, you trust me through what you're about to go through. It's going to be daunting. It's going to be hard. And you're actually going to fail at times. Israel did too, going into the promised land. They failed at times. You know when they failed? When they trusted their own strength instead of God's, or when they trusted their eyes to assess the situation rather than their faith. There's probably a lesson in there somewhere, right? It's a bit on the nose. I don't have to explain it, I don't think. So, Jesus tells them, same thing. I will go before you into Galilee. It's going to look dark. It's going to look like failure. It's going to be some real failure on some points. But there is hope because I will rise and I will lead you and I will not forsake you. I'll meet you in Galilee. See you there. What a message of hope for people who've just been told they are going to go through a time of a dark valley of failure. I think it's important for us as Christians and as disciples of Jesus, or just people exploring Christ and trying to figure out, is this something I want to give my life to? Is Jesus someone I want to give my life to? To know that, yeah, some of this stuff is scary. It's scary to stand out there on your own. Some people are on their own when they follow Christ. Family is not supportive. Friends are not supportive. And that can be scary. Maybe you live in a place where people are pretty antagonistic toward faith and religion and following Christ. To know that He's with you, that He goes before you, that when the pressure is on, He will be your strength, and that when, inevitable as it will be, when you fail at times to do your best, or even to do good at all, He will still forgive, strengthen, renew, and lift you back up again. He goes before you, and He'll see you on the other side. That's an incredible message of encouragement and hope from Jesus at a time when they really needed it. And they didn't actually think they needed it, but they needed it, okay? And that's kind of our problem. So sometimes we don't get that we really are going to have difficulty. I mean, we in our heads we go, yeah. But sometimes pride says, well, other people would have difficulty. You know, if I was there, I wouldn't have been like Peter. I wouldn't have denied him. If I was there, I wouldn't have been like these disciples. I wouldn't have run and fled. I'd have stood strong. Well, that's what they said, okay? They all said the same thing. And Peter stands up forcefully and says, oh, well, maybe these guys. And I kind of laugh about Peter's reaction because Peter is here being Peter, okay? Peter puts his foot in his mouth all the time. And his pride bubbles to the surface here, and he says, well, you know, these guys, they're not as strong as I am, but me, I can handle this. This is no problem. I got it, Jesus, and it's just not going to be failure. Not on my part, not me. And Jesus looks at Peter and says, actually, before the rooster crows twice, before the end of the night, Peter, you will have denied me 3 times. Your failure, he's basically saying, is going to be the most spectacular of all these guys. We have a saying come straight out of the book of Proverbs, chapter 16, verse 18, that pride goes before the fall. This is sometimes the form that pride takes before the fall. It's not always an arrogant, conceited man. Peter is not an arrogant, conceited man. Sometimes it's just we believe so much in the strength of our own faith. We believe so much. That's different from believing in the strength of God through faith. Okay? Believing in the strength of your faith is different. That's still ultimately, I believe in myself, right? So, we make that mistake. We believe there's no way that I would make this mistake. Other people, sure, but surely not I. And that's when Satan has us. That's cheese in the mousetrap of pride, isn't it? Yeah, we are all susceptible. We like to think that we are all the exception. We've kind of been taught by our culture we're all the exception to the rule, whatever the rule is, including the rule of the failure to live up to what we claim as our faith. But we're not the exception. We're all human, and therefore we all fail. We all make mistakes. And that can be depressing. Sure, I get it. Depresses me sometimes too. However, there is again hope. When Jesus says this to Peter, he doesn't say, and I want nothing to do with you. This is so important for us to get. He does not say, and I want nothing to do with you. The promise he had just made, I will go before you. I will be with you. I will not forsake you. I'll go before you to Galilee, is still there. He has known, again, from before the creation of the world, what we would be. Good, bad, ugly. And he has loved us. And he is faithful to us, even through our mistakes. So, we want to make sure that what we trust in as disciples is not ourselves and our strength, because that will fail. We need to trust in God's presence, Christ's presence with us, within us, and that he goes before us. That's where our strength is. That's where our hope is. That's where our eternity is. And that's such a blessing, because it means the things that you've been frustrated with this week, the things that you're frustrated that you said or that you did, God knows. God loves you anyway. Still good to get that off your chest and go to him and say, God, I blew it. Okay? Mend the fences you need to mend, do the things you need to do, correct the things you need to correct, but do it knowing you can mend, you can correct, you can grow, you can do better, because he's with you, because he loves you. Peter will. Jesus will search Peter out, and he will purposely go to him after those 3 denials and say, Peter, do you love me? And Peter will say, yes, I do. He'll say, then feed my sheep, which is Jesus' way of saying, then I still want you for the job. I still want you for the job. I still want you as my disciple. I still want you as my apostle. And he will tell him that 3 times. And he will send Peter into his mission, redeemed, whole, forgiven, strengthened, still imperfect, still going to make mistakes, and loved, and forgiven, and redeemed. Same for you. Same for you, right? This is what Jesus wants you to know. The same for you. So let me just wrap it up by saying this. Why do we have this here? Well, for one thing, these are the events. But for the other, so that we will learn some things. And I think one of the things we need to learn is that sometimes the path to victory in our life goes only through our defeats and our failures. We would like it a different way. We would like all of our victories to come through minor victories. Just keeps building, keeps getting better and better and better, and we just keep climbing up that ladder. But that's not how life works, is it? You learn through failure. Sometimes we learn more through failure than we do through success. Sometimes success just, if it comes too easily, we don't learn a thing. And our pride builds up, and then that comes before a fall. Instead, God knows some of our greatest victories come through our failures. It's the only way to get there. And it's the only way for us to learn that we really can lean on the God who goes before us. So, instead of letting Satan beat you up about those things, because he will try that, you just remind yourself, and Satan if you need to, but God loves me anyway. God goes before me. God redeems me. God renews me. God focuses me back where I was supposed to be. And God will be my victory. God bless you. Have a great week.
Oh, victory in Jesus, my Savior forever. He sought me and bought me with His redeeming blood. He loved me ere I knew Him, and all my love is to Him. He plunged me